Hello everyone, it's been a while since we did one of these videos, but as I was mentioning in one of my recent posts, it seems like a good time to get started again as the markets are indeed a lot more volatile and interesting. I see there's more questions, there's more things to talk about. So the point of this video is really to give a bit of a recap of where our portfolio stands at the moment, the rationale in more detail for some of my investment decisions and allocations, and just give you kind of a broader sense, zoom out a bit. Why am I invested in so much in crypto, in specific cryptos? What is my plan going forward? When are we going to sell? All these kinds of things, just so we're more on the same page. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments and I'll get back to you. And if there's interest, as I mentioned recently, we can also do live sessions, which are always good fun, so that I can answer your questions in a more interactive way. So starting here just on the eToro homepage, and just as a quick reminder, this is my own portfolio. So as you can see, I have a significant amount of money in here, nearly $100,000. Where it was above 100,000 recently, but clearly we're going through quite a correction, so it's a bit lower than that. But just a reminder that I am trading my own account and I do have a significant amount of money on the line, so you can rest assured that I'm always going to be doing what I consider to be the most sensible, smart thing to do. It's certainly not an amount of money that I just want to be messing around with. So if we go into the portfolio, our biggest allocations at the moment have become Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana. Now, I say have become and not are, because I think it's just an important distinction to make, and to remember how we got here. So if you look at Bitcoin, for example, you can see that our current position is worth just over 20,000. But here it also tells us that we have bought 0.33 Bitcoins at an average price of 31,000. So we are at the moment, even during the drawdown, up 93% on these positions. Ethereum, similar story. We have 6 ETH here, bought at around an average price of 2,100. Currently up 40%. A lot of the buys are actually better than that. The price is skewed up a bit because a while ago I made a bit of a tweak. I sold some Solana. I can't remember when it was, maybe a month or two ago, because it was becoming disproportionately large compared to the other cryptos. So I sold some Sol and re-added it to ETH and Bitcoin. Whereas Sol has really been the big performer for us, and we'll get into it in detail why I think it's going to be, or already has become really, the leader of this cycle and one of the best investments that we can make. So even though we're down at the moment, and we'll take a look at the charts, between 30 and 40%, we're still up 300% on these buys. So most of the Solana here was bought, and you can come into my portfolio, by the way, and see all these numbers yourself as well. You can see, apart from this one where I added a little bit when Sol was 113, most of them were in the 20s, 24, 18. So our average purchase price here is just under $31. So at the highs, we would have been up sort of 7x, and now we're up sort of 4 to 5x, that kind of range. So these are not allocations that I've bought now or recently. These are positions that, for the ones of you who have been copying me, for a year or more, we were already in huge profit, even though right now we see a significant drawdown for April. We were up, already over 50% for the year, And towards the end of last year, this was really mostly thanks to Solana as well. We were up a good, what is this, over 40 or 50% just in the last few months. So it's just a reminder that we're sort of in, I would say, around the middle of the cycle or of the trade, if you want to see it as probably a year-long trade, where, especially with reference to Solana, these positions were mostly bought in January of 2023. So we're already over a year in. We've had to be very patient. For a long time, these positions didn't really move. If we take a look at the chart here of Solana, you can see that the purchase points were around here. So for the majority of a year, we were kind of mostly flat. And then it was really kind of late October of last year where things really, really started to change. So again, just putting things into context, as I always say, I'm investing in things with quite a long-term view in mind. And they do require patience because it's very hard to time them exactly. So in my mind, I could see the value and the future of Solana during this bear market here. Don't know exactly when or how it's going to play out, but the thesis is coming to fruition, and I think we're in the middling stages, as I mentioned, and we'll get more into why I think that's where we are. And unfortunately, volatility really goes hand in hand with high returns. I see my job here as maximizing my own returns and therefore my returns for all my copiers and followers. And in order to do that, there's really no way around it. We have to stomach a certain amount of volatility. And I think this type of communication will be helpful for you and for me as well. It's always good to remind ourselves of our thesis, because these are the times that really test us, and it's actually the worst time to make a decision. You need to be very clear about your thesis, your beliefs, your hypothesis behind the trade, and then hold on to it if things aren't changing. So in terms of crypto, this kind of drawdown that we're seeing now, so the highs were around 200, we went all the way down to 120. You can see that's right around 40%. That's hard. That's a big drawdown and hard to deal with. But when you're looking at the kind of returns that you get from crypto, it's just part of the process. So if we look back at any of the previous cycles, so for example here in 2021, Bitcoin broke out here around the $20,000 level, and you can see we had a pretty quick double to 40,000, and then it probably doesn't look as bad here once the chart updates, or in hindsight, but we had to go from 40 down to 28. So that's in the 30s, 30% drawdown. And every cycle, if you go back, you can see that there's multiple of these drawdowns that are very difficult to stomach and always kind of feel like the end of the world. But if you're able to hold on and you have a plan, then you're able to reap the rewards. And when it comes to investing in these kind of volatile assets, it's often the name of the game is kind of resisting your emotions, because naturally you will have these cycles of greed and fear, and they will push you to do exactly the wrong thing. So when the markets are crashing, you will be very tempted to sell, and that's exactly the wrong time to do it. And when the markets are really, really hot, you'll be more and more tempted to buy, and more people get sucked in. And that's why there's some interesting metrics that we can refer to that will help us gauge what stage we're at. So for those of you, I know there's a variety of levels of experience and expertise in the among you listeners today, but if you remember Bitcoin in 2021 or maybe even 2017, the exact tops are when everyone is talking about it, everyone is invested, and even the people who were very, very skeptical just see that all their friends, family, everyone is invested in it. Everyone seems to be making easy money. And that's when they're the last ones to buy. And then there's basically no buyers left. And so the price will then plummet. But that's just to reference how, you need to be aware of your emotions. And you can Google, there's an interesting fear and greed index, and that will give you a sense of where we stand. So if we zoom out a bit, right, where do we stand in this cycle? So we are very, very early, or I would say early to mid. If we just look at very factually at the charts, Bitcoin broke its previous all-time high, which was just right around $69,000. We hit 73, but we haven't really made much progress here, right? We're still hanging around this range. Ethereum, similar story. We haven't broken all-time highs. We hit 4,000. Now we're having a bit of a correction. Solana, again, similar story. The high from the previous cycle was around 260. We haven't even breached that. In every cycle, historically, the coins that are leaders, so Bitcoin and ETH mostly, and this cycle Sol too, they always make new highs, and usually it's a significant multiple of the previous high. Another way to gauge this, which isn't just looking at the chart, is to look at what usually causes, or one of the things that causes this kind of move in Bitcoin, and that is the Bitcoin halving. So if we take a look here, interestingly enough, the next Bitcoin halving is happening, or expected to happen, in around just under 2 days. We don't know exactly when it's going to happen because the timing of the blocks is a little bit unpredictable, but this shouldn't be too far off. Now, why is this important? This happens on average every 4 years. And what it means is that every block that is mined in Bitcoin, which on average is every 10 minutes, the miner who mines that block gets a reward in Bitcoin. Every 4 years, that gets cut in half. So at the moment, the reward is, I believe, 6.25 Bitcoins. And it's going to be reduced to 3.125. So when that happens, there's automatically less Bitcoin being produced or being emitted by the network. And so there's less sell pressure, or at least from mining activities, there'll be less sell pressure. So it's really just kind of a supply and demand thing, which tends to just push the price up. So if we have a look, this is one of the best models that there is for Bitcoin. It's called the stock to flow model. So these lines that you see here, these show you all the previous halvings and the halving that we're just about to hit. So bear in mind, this is a logarithmic scale. So we're not going from 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, but it's multiples of 10. So $1,000, 10,000, 100, a million. So back here in the 2012, 2013 cycle, you can see the halving happened here, and almost like clockwork, we went from $10, $20 all the way up to 1,000. Huge move. Things were more volatile in the past. The volatility is reducing a bit, so you can see that was what they call it, a 50x. The next halving in 2016, Bitcoin was around $500. It went all the way up to 20K. So again, a huge move. And you see how the timing is really quite uncanny. And that's one of the many beautiful things of Bitcoin, as it's basically just a mathematical model. You can study it in a very kind of precise way, and it does have some predictability to it. Obviously, there's other variables too, but these are kind of the basics of how it functions. Then the previous halving was in 2020. Bitcoin was trading around $6,000, and the high was 60 or 69. So even the most recent cycle, the halving to top multiple was around 10x. Down here we saw 50, then what was this, sort of 40. Here it was, we said around 10. So even if this is compressing, which, you know, we don't really have enough data to make that statement, but even if it was, the absolute minimum that I would expect in the course of this cycle, we don't know exactly how it's going to play out or how long it's going to take. It could take, you know, another year from here, but I think it's totally reasonable to expect at least a 3 to 5x, maybe 10 optimistically. But again, making all these predictions, I always find myself underestimating Bitcoin when I look back. But the bottom line is, right now we're at 70,000, okay? If we had a 10x, that would take us to 700K. But even if we had a super conservative move, like just a 2 or 3x, we're still looking at a $200,000 Bitcoin, and we're nowhere near that. You can see here that we really haven't started. And why I'm very bullish, or one of the many reasons, is that as I've mentioned many times over the last few months, the fact that we've now switched from retail only investors to institutional money as well is just, it's hard to underestimate how much of an impact that has. That the levels of money coming in from institutional flows, it just absolutely dwarfs any kind of retail money. The other thing that you can kind of look at to have a bit of an estimate here is the stock to flow model predicts where the price is going to go as an average. You can see usually we overshoot, or at least kind of meet the prediction, right? The prediction here is 500,000. So if we don't hit 500,000 Bitcoin, that would actually be an anomaly. It would be the first time ever. And again, just a reminder that this is at a logarithmic scale. So if we overshoot this by a bit, we're actually talking, you know, $1 million is just here. So I know that sounds absolutely crazy, but Bitcoin always does. You know, I remember trading Bitcoin down here, you know, $500 or $600, and 20,000 just seemed absolutely insane, even 10. So I think it's good to just look at the facts and remember that the drawdowns happen, but Bitcoin is here to stay. It's growing up, and there's really no reason to be a seller right now. At least that is my opinion based on you know, all the information that I've looked into. I don't want to make this too long of a video, but I also wanted to give you a feeling for some of the information that's out there and what makes me so confident about this. So now maybe we can talk a little bit about Solana, as that has become our biggest position, I believe. We've trimmed it, but it just keeps moving. If we look back at the charts, right, Bitcoin from the lows is up sort of 4x or so. Ethereum from the lows of this cycle was around, let's say, $1,500. So it's maybe 1,000, doubled, tripled, something like that. Sol, the lows of this cycle were around 8. So we're already up, whatever, 15, 20x. It really is moving very powerfully. So, you know, why is this? What's happening? Well, Solana is different to very different to ETH and Bitcoin. Bitcoin you can view, I'll try and keep it simple here as a comparison, you can view as a store of value, more kind of gold, so you're not using it for small transactions. You're not going to go and try and buy your coffee with a bar of gold. So Ethereum was kind of developed to facilitate smaller transactions, to facilitate everything that's happening on chain in terms of decentralized finance, in terms of smart contracts, all the applications that require a little more complexity, a little more flexibility and speed that weren't really suitable for Bitcoin moved over to Ethereum. Other places too, but Ethereum was the main one. So actually, if we look at this, you can see here the rankings by market cap. Now, the problem with Ethereum kind of became apparent in the last cycle, but the one before as well, in that it becomes very congested, especially when crypto is popular. Ethereum can only handle sort of 15 to 60 transactions per second, that kind of ballpark. So when there's a lot of people trying to push transactions through the network, what happens is the fees just go up. Even the baseline for a fee is quite expensive. We're talking at the very minimum a few dollars, more likely 10, 20, 30, something like that, depending on the complexity of what you're trying to do. And during the height of the bull market, that it can go crazy, right? It can be hundreds or thousands of dollars to just push a transaction through. So not really that practical or that scalable. So Solana kind of came along to, among other reasons, try and fix this problem. So if we look at Solana, you can see right now the transactions per second, 2,600. The average fee, we're talking fractions of a penny. So in a world where decentralized finance becomes big or very big, and a lot of finance moves onto the blockchain, or not just finance, all sorts of things move onto the blockchain, we need a high throughput, and we need something that is, fast and affordable. And that's really what Solana is doing and why it's winning so much. I'll do another video where I can actually show you a demonstration. We can go more into the weeds. But for anyone who's interested in really using the blockchain for any sort of activity, Solana is just so much smoother, cheaper, faster, enjoyable to use. And so it's really kind of gained huge traction with everyone who is deep into crypto. So if we take a look at the current rankings, you can see Bitcoin has a 1.2 trillion market cap. Then we have Ethereum at 360 billion, sorry. And then Solana is down here at 60. So there's a sort of 6-to-1 gap between Solana and Ethereum. So one thing to point out is that I think there's kind of a perception that, Solana has moved up the ranks so quickly that a lot of people maybe don't take it seriously enough, and they throw it in the bucket of what are known as altcoins. So things that can be very, very volatile, very risky, and maybe just very speculative. But when you actually look at the market cap, Solana is up there. It's only behind, you can ignore the stable coins, it's only behind Binance Coin, and then Ethereum, is right there. And because of the reasons that I was mentioning earlier on, I don't think it's unreasonable for Solana to catch up, or but potentially even flip Ethereum. So in terms of risk reward, I think it's really one of the best places to be. It's the network that makes the most sense to me, where I see the most growth. And this is just not just a personal opinion, but we can actually look at some of the on-chain data. So let's start by looking at here, for example. So this is daily active addresses. Solana in green, Bitcoin in orange, and Ethereum in gray. So you can see the amount of active addresses is just way, way higher on Sol. And we had an explosion just a couple of months ago. Transactions, this is really where you see, the scalability and how much people are actually using it, right? So you can barely see Bitcoin and Ethereum down here. Now, Bitcoin, this is not saying that Solana is better than Bitcoin. They have different purposes. So it's not necessarily a fair comparison. But when it comes to Ethereum, they have more of a similar purpose. And so Solana is just on a different level. And there's an upgrade coming in the near future, in the next few months, which is supposedly going to 10x or that kind of ballpark, the amount of throughput, the amount of transactions per second, called Fire Dancer if you want to look it up. Then here you can look at trading volumes. So again, when Solana started to actually catch up with Ethereum, it was mind-blowing for a lot of people, because Ethereum was just the undisputed king, really, in terms of trading volumes, decentralized exchanges. And Solana has just caught up so quickly. I think it was unfairly oversold in the last cycle because people connected it with FTX. And then when the whole drama happened with FTX, it got massively oversold. People were concerned about all the Solana that FTX still held in their estate. So there was a lot of excess fear. Some of it was justified, but it's come back with a vengeance. We look at fees. Solana is the lowest by far. Then what else is interesting here? I think those are the main things, right? So highest number of active addresses, highest number of transactions by far, and lowest fees by far. That's really the point. So if you think of a blockchain that is going to be actually used and useful for people, this is what you want to see. High volumes, high number of transactions, high use, and low fees. So I want to try and keep this under half an hour, but hopefully that paints a bit of a picture of where I think we stand and why I think Solana is the most logical position to have on top of Bitcoin and ETH. In terms of my plan for selling, as I've mentioned, I would rather sell a little bit earlier this cycle and avoid the extreme volatility that we get towards the top. So there'll be a number of ways that we can do that. But we don't have to worry about it yet because we're still very early. So as the next few months go by, I'm constantly monitoring a variety of different metrics. This is one of them. As Bitcoin approaches, let's say 200 or 300K, might want to start thinking about just selling little bits, reducing our exposure. And then as you get to this level or exceed it, you definitely want to be selling more and more heavily. And there'll be a high correlation between Bitcoin's price and ETH and Sol and other coins too. Then there's all sorts of other interesting things that you can look at. One, for example, is this, which is the correlation between the Bitcoin price and the Coinbase ranking in the Coinbase ranking in the App Store. Now, why would this might not be as good this cycle, and the reason this was such a good predictor in previous cycles is that all the money in crypto was retail. So most people were just people like you and me downloading Coinbase and buying Bitcoin that way. Now that we have institutional investors as well, things might be a little bit different, but it's still an interesting metric. So you can see here, the correlation is actually quite uncanny. At the moment, I think the Coinbase app is ranked around somewhere between 100 and 200 in the App Store. As it gets closer and closer to top 10 or number one, then it will become clear that we're kind of in a crypto frenzy and things are probably overbought, overvalued, and time to start selling. We can also keep an eye on the charts. There's really a lot of different metrics that you can use to decide when to sell. But the wisest thing is probably to scale out and try and get out earlier rather than later. But as we get closer to that, I will go more in depth on that topic, and we can kind of go through it together and see when it makes sense to start selling. If we look at the stock to flow model, you can see even in terms of timing, this is quite accurate, and the top is often right around the earlier side of where this line straightens out. So if we look back in 2014, the top was just there, match that. In 2018, it was a little later. So the date here was July 2017. The top was actually, I think it was around December. This last cycle, we had a slightly stranger sort of double top cycle. One was just before around March, and then the actual top was October, November. So that's to say that the top of this cycle should not really be any sooner than, quite conservatively, March, let's say, of next year. So we're talking about, still a year to go. So that's why it's important to not think about this too early. Be patient, realize that the correction that we're having now, we're probably going to have to deal with another, I would say at least 2 of that magnitude, by being a little bit diversified with some stocks, holding some cash, trading around it a little bit. We can reduce that volatility, but that's just part of it. So I think I'll wrap it up here. I really hope this was helpful and helped you to kind of see things through my eyes, how I'm thinking about things and what my plan is going forward. So I really look forward to hearing your feedback in the comments. And yeah, if you're interested, as I said, we can do some live sessions as well. It's always fun to get to know you and have a Q&A. All right. That's it for today. Take care, and I will speak to you soon.